Good morning, everybody. It's 8 o'clock, and I want to welcome you to At the Intersection, where faith and community and civic leaders cross paths in this dominant culture of separation of church and state. But we cross paths to learn together, learn from each other, and work more mutually together in meeting the needs of the most vulnerable in our community. So it's good to see you all this morning. People come in. And I am aware too that if we start putting things in chat right away, not everybody gets to see those. That's the one thing about Zoom. I wish that the chat, whenever you enter, you could see all the chat, but you can only see it from when you enter. So we can make some announcements while we give folks a couple extra minutes to join us. If any of you were able to join us last Sunday for the Healing Power of Stories, it went really well. It was, I have to say, not only informative, but a lovely afternoon, but healing as well, to hear the different stories and to, we had 4 really amazing San Antonio authors: Father David Garcia, Naomi Shiab Nye, Simranjit Singh, and Mario Salas. And just so proud that San Antonio has, our stellar residents, our stellar neighbors who represent us in many cases globally. So that was lovely to be with them. Can somebody be checking if Patricia makes it? That would be good.
She just came in. She's
awesome. Here. Karen, did you want to announce the domestic violence conference quick, and we'll announce it again later?
Actually, Patricia is going to do that in her section. So
awesome.
If you're ready to hand it over to the team, Samira is going to open us up.
Oh, well, good. Let's give one more minute. The share screen is open. Any other quick announcements of things that are coming up that people should know about from the Intersection Gallery? I almost said Peanut. Oh, Bill has his hand up. Maybe he's just modeling for the rest of us how it works. Is that what you're doing, Bill?
No, I actually have a quick announcement. So sacred.org, as you know, researches organizations and programs around town. And one of the requests we've had that we haven't been able to fill is request for affordable or sliding scale auto repair. And so we have found no programs like that. And so we're looking for, if anybody is aware of a program or aware of an organization that might be helping people repair cars, individuals that are low income or otherwise experiencing financial hardship, then we would like to hear about that. Or if you have contacts in the automobile repair industry that might be interested in talking about what it would take to develop such a program, then I would appreciate a connection. So thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Well, yes,
I have a quick announcement. October 8th is the annual NAMI walks at the San Antonio Zoo. We encourage everybody to come out and walk for mental health. So I put a link to the walk in the chat, and we hope to see as many people out there as can come.
Thank you, Doug. And Patty has her hand up.
Yes, I would just, in response to Bill's comment, we went to go work with a company called O'Brien's, and the owners did a workshop and training session for women to learn how to work on their cars and to do maintenance to their cars. And it was free. And there were about 85 women there. And it was wonderful. And I think we're also planning to do one of those events for October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Thank you. That was great information. See, that's how this intersection works. Yep. From fixing cars, right, to domestic violence today. It's 8:05, so I think we'll get started. Some of you might recall that it's been almost exactly a year we had a series from all of our council persons during this time, September. And we had 2 council persons every week, and they came and talked. But Manny Plias from District 8 came, and he just kind of said, I know what we're supposed to talk about, but, and I think Manny was really the only one who went off script. And he really held us as those of us who are faith leaders and community leaders, he really held us to account. That I remember the story you told. There was a woman who'd been doused with gasoline and set on fire, and it was in the news. And he said he didn't hear one thing from one faith community or faith leader. And so he really challenged us again. He's been challenging all along the way, but he really challenged us to step up. And I have to be honest with you, of all the collaboratives that we have, this one has been the most challenging to move forward. And I hope we have a time at the end to talk about that a little bit more. Why is that so challenging within the faith community to become involved in this community concern that really increased during the pandemic? And I know that we have folks who are going to tell us about that today too. So I'm going to hand it over to them, but I saw Manny the other day in passing, and he kind of just looked at me in the eyes and he goes, so I hear you're meeting on Thursday. And I said, yeah. And he just kind of looked at me like, you know, so we're going to do this, right? You know, without words, it was real obvious. So you're meeting on Thursday. So, oh, one other thing about today. Today is when the city budget is voted on. So city council meets at 9, and I invite you all to hold our leadership in prayer while they make those final decisions. So Karen Ball and Sammy Lewis are co-leads on this collaborative. And so I'm going to bounce it to one of you. I think it's Karen to lead us through.
Actually, Samara's going to start us out.
All right. Samara, it's all
Okay.
yours.
Good morning. Yeah, my team asked me to start because I think I would like to share you something about being involved with this collaborative. As we are here all, you know, either faith leaders or either, you know, community leaders, we have some impact. You know, we can reach out to our communities, we can reach out to larger people. So what I would like to share with you is I have been involved since the last year of this collaborative from the beginning, and I even have a previous involvement with the visiting shelter and organizing panels on domestic violence with the Raindrop Foundation and with many other institutions, and we all know that, we are all aware that this is a very important topic, and sometimes it is overwhelming, we don't know what to do. But I think this collaborative is a very, very good start for us as we consider ourselves faith leaders, because it is the collaborative that is funded by, you know, faith leaders. So we can just try to do our best by just being involved within this collaborative. And also, you know, from our perspective, we have a lot to offer in terms of preventing domestic violence in our communities. So when I'm looking at this from my perspective, I would like to share, I'm a leader at Raindrop Foundation, which is a Turkish American, I would say, Muslim immigrant community here. So when I'm coming to the collaborative, I know that this is a huge crisis issue, but also I know that we are serving, we have people who, you know, we are serving, that we can spread the awareness among those people we are serving. This is one aspect. And this is, I think, one of the most important aspects, because domestic violence is an ongoing crisis, but it has 2 ways. One is just the silent, you know, developing that affects our future generations, our youth. If we just talk about it in, you know, continuously, during the year, multiple times, it's just, if you just put it in our calendars, if we educate our youth, you know, special programs with the youth, special programs with, you know, adults, just it doesn't have to be an overwhelming thing, but just keep it in our calendars. It is one thing. And the other thing, we also have wonderful communities that whenever we want to do something good, our congregations just step up and want to help. So yes, there's a crisis. And when we want to help the shelter, when we want to help those people in need, our communities are there to help. So I think we can go back to our communities after, listening to this wonderful presentation today. I'll go back to my community and just have another conversation with them, and we'll ask them, okay, what we can do. This is my perspective, and I wanted to share this with you, and I was asked to share. So, and I will hand it into Karen again, and I think we'll just talk about what we have been doing and what we really want to see in this collaborative.
Thank you, Samira. So why we asked Samira to go first is kind of model this call to action, okay? We're gonna give you a lot of information. It certainly is just the tip of the iceberg because we can't do this in 15 minutes, give you the whole picture. But we don't want this information to just go into your head and stay there. We want some action steps. We want you to do something, having acknowledged the information that you gave. And so that's why we had Samira do kind of a call to action of what she plans to do. So Patricia, who has worked in this field, many, many years, I'll let her give the descriptors of that, is going to kind of give us the scope of what we're facing as a community in San Antonio. And then when she's done, she'll pass it back to me. Thanks, Patricia.
You're muted.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm going to share some slides with you this morning here at the intersection. And I do want to share just from the very beginning that one of the things that has grounded me in my career of doing this work since 1979 is this scripture that says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." When I read that, it really grounded me in terms of, my involvement in this effort, and has done so consistently across the decades. And so this is my basis of where I launch these efforts that I have engaged in all these years. And I want you to notice my image here because it reminds me of, the synapses in our brain. When children are exposed to traumatic events, those synapses get broken. But the hope lies in the fact that new synapses can always be formed, can always happen across the lifespan if we expose people to positive, loving, nurturing, respectful relationships. And so keep that in mind as we talk this morning. So we can define domestic violence as a pattern of behavior in any relationship that is used to gain or maintain power and control over an intimate partner or family member. It includes physical, sexual, emotional, economic, and psychological actions or threats. This includes any behaviors that frighten, intimidate, terrorize, manipulate, hurt, humiliate, blame, injure, or wound someone. I often refer to our community as the walking wounded. Intimate partner violence, spousal abuse, relationship violence, family violence, dating violence, teen dating violence, elder domestic violence are all terms we in this profession use when addressing these issues about domestic violence. So what do the numbers reveal to us? Well, in Texas, 1 in 3 women experience domestic violence. 1 in 3. That's a lot of people. And in 2021, the SAPD received over 71,000 family violence calls. 22 homicides resulted from that, and that is a number which is down from 30 in 2020. The Sheriff's Department filed over 2,100 family violence cases, which is a 17% increase from the previous year. And family violence prevention services provided services to 52, almost 53 unduplicated clients, which is a 1.3 increase over 2020. The Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid conducted over 1,300 domestic violence and family law intakes, which is also experiencing an increase. At the Center for Healthcare Services, self-reported witnessing or experiencing of family violence within the household increased by 4.7 for adults and increased by 9.2 for children. So, you know, these numbers are pretty staggering, right? The Family Justice Center, which is part of the Bexar County's District Attorney's Office, saw a 23% increase of people applying for protective orders. And this tells us that people don't want to live in family violence. That's why they're seeking protective orders. I remember when they first put the protective order application online, that you could apply for it online. In the first 5 days of that application being online, 330 people applied for a protective order in the first 5 days. So those are extreme calls for help. The SAPD also reports a 17% increase of family violence incidences with gun involvement. This is the other deadly aspect of domestic violence. From Moms Demand Action and Everytown, we know that when there's a combination of weapons and domestic violence in the same household, your chances of being murdered increase by 500%. And so that's also a very scary prospect in a state where we have permitless carry. Anybody can have a weapon and anybody can access weapons, and they are, okay? The SAPD also reports a 48% increase in protective order violations. So even though victims will get a protective order, the people who use violence clearly have a willingness to violate those protective orders to get at their victims. So we have citizens all over our city that are extremely vulnerable to the behavior of people who use violence. So what are some of the barriers that we encounter? It's a big deal to try to leave an abusive relationship. It is the most dangerous time. Your chances of being murdered increase by 75% when you're in the process of leaving an abusive relationship. This is why so many victims stay. This is why so many victims come and go, because of the threats involved, because of the, you know, fear and the terror that they feel. They also fear being judged and fear not being believed. They also fear retaliation and, you know, for everything about their life and their careers to be permanently damaged. And they feel responsible for the abuse, or that speaking up can lead to direct physical harm, again, to them or to their children. So what we have to say to many survivors, all the survivors out there, is that they're not alone, that we believe you, that regardless of when and how you decide to speak your truth, we believe you. We support you and are here for you whenever you feel like you want to talk, no matter when you decide to do so. And it is our job to listen and then to say, how can I be of help? What would be helpful to you? It is not our job to tell people what to do. They already have somebody who tells them what to do, and that person is the one who uses violence against them. And so we have to recall and always carry in our head that they are the experts in their life, and they must guide the conversation. So the other thing that, I've learned from doing this work is that when we do it, every tiny step is actually a giant step. It often feels like, what can I possibly offer to this? You have no idea the power that you have in your hands and your ability to act. When we expose domestic violence, this is the other thing that's very important. We disempower it. We take away its power when it comes out into the open. The secrecy, silence, and shame that undergirds domestic violence is lost. They lose their power when light reveals their true purpose. And we can do that by encouraging people to come forward. When we turn away from addressing it, we help the person who uses violence to maintain their position of power and to be free to continue damaging this and future generations. Childhood trauma is never tended to is the setup for adult trauma. Again, going back to the reference of we're all the walking wounded. So in our community recently, a survey of 1,500 respondents revealed that we are dealing with a minimum of 4 generations that have been impacted by domestic violence. So there's a lot of work to be done. And these are some of the things that we can do in terms of a call to action. We should always evaluate for domestic violence. We cannot base the guarantees of safety from the perpetrator. The survivor and perpetrator interviews, when we talk to a couple, it must be done separately because the person who uses violence is counting on the victim to not cooperate. And survivors need reassurance and choices. Again, going back to it's not our job to tell them what to do. It's our job to tell them, you can do this. You have the skills, you have the ability. We're going to support you. And then lead them to somebody that can teach them about those choices. And then everybody needs a safety plan when they're trying to escape because of how much danger they're in when leaving. And then, of course, we have to be aware of high risk behaviors. Strangulation, usually when that's going on, if a person doesn't get away from that situation, they usually end up dead if they've been strangled. Pregnancy is also a high risk behavior. And then, of course, when you're in the process of leaving. And then, of course, the important thing is to connect people to the resources that exist in the community and be willing to set up a safety or code word with one of your congregants if they come to you and say, this is happening to me. And, they can, if you want them to trust you, be willing to set up a code word with them in terms of how they can communicate with you that they're in danger. So thank you so much for being here this morning. Thank you so much for your willingness to listen. And I look forward to hearing from y'all.
Thank you so much for giving us just a snippet there of what's going on in our communities. My role at this particular time was kind of to give you a little bit background of how this collaborative came about. Anne already alluded to that in terms of it was, a call out from one of our council people that said, hey, I'm not hearing anything from the faith community here. And so a number of us stepped forward and said, we're not going to be silent anymore. We don't know exactly how to fit into this puzzle. We're figuring that out, as Samara said, but we are stepping forward and we are saying no more. We don't want this anymore in our communities. So a small group of us reached out to Patricia at the Peace Initiative and Marta at the Batters Women's Shelter. We went through a tour. We got educated with the stats. We got educated in terms of what resources are available for all parties. Children that might witness the domestic violence, individuals who are battered, and then those who employ violence for coercion. And so we're really trying to get a holistic lens here. And out of those conversations and information, this particular collaborative decided that we want to try and focus on the front end, the prevention. So how can we have conversations in our faith communities that say this is not, abusive behavior is not acceptable? And if you're engaging in that abusive behavior, then let's have a conversation about what are some other types of behaviors that could be used to create healthy relationships, and getting those individuals resourced, of course, being present with those that are abused, but, you know, again, not pushing them to leave or not leave, or that's totally up for them, just accompanying them and listening to their stories. So my call to action is we need men to step forward onto this collaborative, okay? I do have a co-facilitator who is male. Unfortunately, he's not able to be present this morning because he had some oral surgery, but he's the only one. And we would like, oh, I see Sammy is here. Sorry about that, Sammy. Thank you for coming. We would like to have at least 5 more men join, because this is not an issue that just affects women. It affects our total community. And because we are looking to try and gear towards the prevention side, most of our persons that engage in violence are men. So we need men on this collaborative to input their perspective. Sammy, your hand is up. Would you like to add something?
Yes, good morning. As I shared with you, I just had some surgery yesterday. I didn't know if I'd be able to talk this morning, but I'm in a little discomfort, but I want to say this from a male's perspective. When you were soliciting men, we're talking about godly, masculine men, men who love women, men who respect women, men who honor women as God's creation and the blessing that they are to us. And so we need those kind of men. There's a perception out there that men are anti-women, and that comes in a lot of different forms: sexism, misogynism, and so forth. But we need godly men to show up, to stand up, and to participate in this collaborative, to show that we are totally bought in and we want to make a difference. Okay, and so I want to encourage the faith leaders out there. If you haven't taken the survey, please take the survey so that we can get your responses back. That's what guide us as to how we can partner with you to provide training, to provide resources, and to begin to turn the tide on this thing of domestic violence. No longer just being one who knows about it, one who is aware of it, but one who is in the trenches and trying to make a difference in the life of your own faith communities first and foremost, and then as it would spill out from there, allow it to do so. And so I definitely want to share that. So that will be my, and my call to action would be to the faith leaders would be to create greater awareness and education around domestic violence within your own communities, your own congregations. Some of the ways that I've seen that done is through training of your leadership, ensuring that they know what is domestic violence, how to recognize it, how to get involved, who to direct people to that are experiencing it. Your sermons, have the courage to broach it and talk about it in your sermons about what God has to say about it and how it's something that should not be condoned in the life of those who say they are people of God. Life groups, those provide an excellent opportunity to really take a deeper dive and to connect more intimately with one another and talk about those issues, information pamphlets and so forth. But really, again, create that awareness. It starts with you, the faith leader. It starts with the head, and as it goes from the head, it flows to your congregation. If they see you're bought in and you're taking active action to address these issues, others will definitely step up and partner with you, and you'll see change. And if you can change one family, one life, you've made an impact that is indelible. You've made an impact that will be something that will spread across that whole congregation just from one family being impacted. I'm telling you what I know as growing up in domestic violence and coming out of it and having a successful life myself. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. So dare to make a difference and be a courageous leader when it comes to this. And I know there's a certain stigma attached to it, and there's a cost attached to it. You may not be perceived in a way that you want to be perceived thereafter, but it's not about that. It's about loving people enough to engage in real life issues. And so I would implore you to take the survey so that we can gather those results back and reconnect with you about how we can move forward in making a difference with this issue called domestic violence.
Thank you so much, Sammy. And I know we're right up against time. Lisa has a couple of announcements of domestic violence things that are coming about. She did put them in chat, but I'll let her also tell you about them verbally.
Thank you. So last year, we organized a trip to the Battered Women's and Children's Shelter. And we spent about an hour talking about the issue, learning about the issue together, and then toured the shelter. And we have another tour set up this year, an interfaith tour. I encourage you all to join us on October 27th. I put the link to register. And then there's also an opportunity from the CCDV, which is the Collaborative Commission on Domestic Violence, to have an all-day, it's actually a day and a half, symposium on domestic violence, October 6th to 7th. So please register for that. And they're going to be posting the exact detail agenda, so you'll be able to come in and out as needed. I was just wondering, to show of hands, who attended our tour last year of the shelter? Yeah, that's great. And the reason why we do this is that hopefully after going on the tour, you are inspired. I mean, you're all leaders, somewhere in your leadership to incorporate this issue, you know, whether it be, you have, you know, a parent meeting coming up and you include training on domestic violence in a parent meeting, or in a men's retreat, or in a women's retreat, or in your sermon, or in your Sunday schools. You all have such an opportunity to make an impact. And so we want to keep doing this every year, so that we take some time to be reminded of the people in our community who need help. They're in all of our congregations. They're sitting there, and this isn't something that happens once. This is something that they deal with every single day. They basically live in hell every single day, and their children live in fear. And so we need to use our influence and our leadership to help. So don't be overwhelmed. There are even small things, like Sammy said, even something small could really make an impact.
Thank you, Lisa. I also see that Judge Rosie has her hand up. Welcome this morning. So good to see you here.
Good morning, everyone. I got the tail end of this. I've been working with Carrie Wilcoxon the last couple of years, and her work in the faith-based community. And what I can tell you all is that the majority of the victims go back to the offender. They love that person. They want that person healed. and they want that person sober. And if you all are truly interested in stopping the scourge of domestic violence, then you'll look at how we can stop it and nip it in the bud. And that's the offender behavior. And if you're interested in the work that we're doing in Reflejo Court, giving the offender trauma treatment, healing them, and then getting them sober and getting them employed and housed, you're more than welcome to come watch the work that we do every day. We have that docket on Fridays. We alternate genders, and it is a very unique type of defendant. Probably, I'm going to tell you all, the most manipulative type of defendant until we call them on it and we correct and change that behavior. And that's just one of the many things that we do in Reflejo Court. So again, I'll ask you to consider Bishop Desmond Tutu's way of looking at things. And that is, we have to stop pulling the drowning people out of the river. And we need to go upstream and figure out why they're falling in the first place. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Judge. That would also be a good thing to encourage, is that people go and watch. So thank you for that invitation and the awareness of that. That's something the collaborative could start to put out there, encourage, support. I'm also thinking too, with all these great invitations to tours, to court, to be on the collaborative, to also think past yourself with this invitation. There are people, I'm sure, that you serve and that you lead who are concerned about this, who would like to be involved. So I know we have so many things that we're working on, and all of them, especially all of them together, can be really overwhelming. Each one of the community concerns could be overwhelming, right? But that doesn't mean that each of us has to be involved in all of them. So please really give, this is my call to action. Please really give some thought to the leaders among us and the leaders among each of us, not on this screen, that you know that could really bring their skills and their commitment and passion into this particular work. And then to share with them, if not you, then them, the conference that's coming up, the tour that's been set up, going to court and watching. I think that that would be really, I know I want to do that. So I'm signing up for that one because I've not done it. And so don't think just about yourself and your participation. And yes, I'm not letting you off the hook either.
And if I could just say one more thing,
Go.
you don't, so every single person in here can watch Domestic Violence Court and Court 13 Mondays and Tuesdays, 9 and 1:30. On Wednesdays, we have jury selection that you can watch in the morning and hear from the community how they see domestic violence. You can see trials. We're going to start a trial today at 9 o'clock and watch how those trials are litigated and prosecuted. On Reflejo Court, we need to hear from you because there's HIPAA issues. You need to sign confidentiality forms. But Mondays and Tuesdays, all of you can watch from anywhere you're at on Zoom. And on Wednesdays, it's the same thing on Wednesday mornings and Thursdays all day. So you really want to get your thumb on the pulse of the community? Come watch what's happening in the courtrooms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All good to know. And you don't even have to leave the comfort of your home to do that, right? You can go and you can watch. It's 8:39, so I'm aware of that. And if those who are on the collaborative are able to stay till 8:45, we'll do that. And maybe they might not all, but I'm sure some of them will be able. I want to not just raise a question, but we raised it in our collaborative meeting this week. Why has this been such a challenge to get the faith community more involved with this community concern? And it was a really interesting conversation, and I want to open that up for anyone to respond to that. And we're all going to learn if we're open and honest, and we need to know that. We need to grapple with that question and not just use what we know as an excuse not to do anything, right? I know when we were talking the other day, I mentioned something that I had learned when I was working at Haven for Hope with social workers, mostly from the social workers, a concept that I had not heard about before. And when we would be talking about, some situation or family we were trying to help, and there were resistance, somebody in the group would always say, well, lean into the resistance. Lean into the resistance. And at first I wasn't even sure, well, what does that mean? And, somebody described it for me and I was like, I don't know. But I started to see it and feel it myself. So when they would say that, it was about leaning into my own resistance. What is it that might make it difficult for me? Why am I resisting something? So to lean into that, to explore my own resistance. But, if that family was having some resistance to moving or something, to lean into that and not necessarily I'll let them off the hook or whatever. Well, why is that? What is really going on? So I know we only have a couple minutes, but if anybody has thoughts about why this is so challenging, and we already write off stigma. Okay, stigma. But to go deeper, why has it been such a challenge to get the faith community more involved? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I'll jump in.
Thank you.
I'll jump in. I would say one of the reasons, as a having a career as an HR professional, just thinking about the business world now, when and it still is a relevant issue and always will be, sexual harassment was such a big issue in the workplace. And one of the challenges around addressing sexual harassment from a top-down perspective was the relationships sometimes that leadership has with perpetrators of that behavior. And so there's a great risk there of having to address someone that you go golf with, that you may spend time with, you have relationship with, but they are potential perpetrators of that behavior. And so you don't want to address it. You want to skirt the issue and not want to address it directly. So it takes a great deal of leadership courage to address an issue such as domestic violence, because you don't know who's going to bubble up as a perpetrator of that behavior, and the risk that is involved with those relationships as you begin to address that, not as an individual, but as a holistic issue within your particular congregation. We're going to talk about it. We're going to address it. We're going to talk about what it is. We're going to talk about how unacceptable it is. And we're going to talk about how we're going to address it should it manifest itself here within this congregation. And these are the action steps that we're going to take. That's a lot of risk involved, because again, you don't know what you don't know. And then you may know what you don't haven't shared with others, and what you have not addressed yourself. And so I think leadership courage is one of the things that is a huge challenge to addressing issues like this.
But doesn't that also then, Sammy, lead us to the greater risk that somebody could die?
Absolutely.
If we don't address the risk.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely correct. And that's how it was again in corporate America with sexual harassment. If you didn't address it, now you would lose. And we call people partners at HEB. We would lose people that were very value added to the company, contributed a lot to the company, added a lot to us as a company, but because we wouldn't address that issue, and I'm not saying it happened, but when it was not addressed, those people would leave, because that was the out that they would see. Well, if you're not going to address it, I'm not going to sit here and continue to be subject to it day in and day out. Even though I ran it up the flagpole, it's not being addressed. And so you're absolutely right. If it's not addressed, it could very well end up that way. Someone could lose their lives.
Patricia, and then Paul.
Well,
let me just say that from my experience in doing this work for so long, what I've seen happen is that when men are close and friendly, and you have a relationship with another man that does this, that person is the perfect person to say, I know what's going on. I would like to be able to be of help for you to stop this behavior, because you're causing harm to your family, to your relationships, to your children, and to your children's future. Because when a person who uses violence is spoken to that way by somebody that they look up to, by somebody that they respect, by somebody that they love, they're much more apt to hear the message and to look inward and look at themselves and look at that reflection of themselves. And so I would just like to put that out there as something to be considered, that if you have a good relationship with somebody who's using violence, you're the perfect person to bring it to their attention in order
And
for that
Seems to
process
me
of
too
healing
that
to happen.
Patty, the risk there too, if you're kind of like the risk of losing a friend compared to the risk of losing a life, you might have to.
Yeah.
You might have to, right?
Yeah.
Paul, you have your hand up and it's 8:46.
One question we can ask ourselves is whether or not your denomination understands that men and women are equal in the eyes of God.
Very good
I
question.
think that's a good note to end on. So I'm going to leave that, because next week is our newest collaborative, the San Society Community Collaborative, that formed 2 days after Uvalde. So these two kind of cover the same territory, but one collaborative is really focusing in on domestic violence, and the San Society is looking more at kind of collective violence like mass shootings. And that's Paul's collaborative. He co-facilitates that with Erica, who's with mental health and their violence prevention team there. So that will be next week at the intersection. I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you for taking the survey. We've gotten quite a few surveys in, and that's great. So thank you for that input. It will really help this collaborative move forward. You all have great weekends. It was really good to see you this morning at the intersection. Bye.